And good evening. Thanks for being with us. I'm Eric Franke. First tonight at 10, he is a registered sex offender with a history of abusing others over nearly 3 decades. Released last week in spite of the state's objections. The Night Team's David Douglas has been following the story. He joins us now with the very latest. David?
Yeah, Eric. Gregory Westby was placed behind bars in 1997 after performing oral sex on a Stoughton boy. In 2007, he was civilly committed to the state's Sand Ridge treatment facility. In August, he filed for his second petition for release. Last week, it was granted. Gregory Westby's release from a state facility for sex offenders to this Eastside Madison motel came against the will of state attorneys. In court, they argued Westby had been, quote, having sex with children since he himself was in grade school, a behavior pattern that continued until he was prosecuted and imprisoned almost 30 years later. 3 years prior, at the end of his prison sentence, Westby met the criteria to be committed to a treatment facility under Chapter 980, a state law permitting certain sex offenders be held past their prison term.
They have a mental disorder, and that mental disorder predisposes them to engage in future acts of sexual violence.
In court this month, testimony indicated Westby could be such a risk. A state psychologist testified Westby declined treatment after being committed and failed sex offender treatment twice in prison. Prior to his release last week, Westby had begun treatment again, but the same psychologist said in court that Westby was just in phase 1, and that sexual deviance is not addressed until phases 2 and 3, that Mr. Westby has not significantly reduced his risk of offending through treatment. So why was he released? Testimony indicated, while a pedophile, Westby was not a psychopath. He scored low on several actuarial exams designed to determine the risk to reoffend. Dane County Judge Sarah O'Brien said in her decision, because of that, the state had not met its burden of proof, saying, quote, I feel an acute sense of responsibility to the children who could be assaulted in the future, but my job is to follow the law, whether it accords with the way I feel or not.
So, David, to prove someone is likely to reoffend, what do they have to show? What is considered likely here?
The burden of proof really is greater than a 50% chance that they're going to reoffend. And in one of those evaluations that Mr. Westby had performed, he scored just a 9% in the next 5 years that he would reoffend, and that wasn't considered to be likely enough, though the state points out that the exams were not designed with people like Mr. Westby in mind, people with a long sexual history, and that they might not really be accurate here.
And you tried to contact Mr. Westby?
We talked to him last night. I spoke to him last night at his hotel, and he said he really didn't want to do an interview with us. He preferred to move on with his life and be left alone.
All right, the Night Team's David Douglas reporting tonight. David, thank you very much.